This is Amy with Creative Catapult Coaching,
And Megan with Focus Like a Mother and Change HP.
and this is the Control Alt Think podcast, and we're discussing the benefit, the actual upside to having meetings.
Yeah, so we decided that we want to talk about how we use external supports and strategies to motivate us to actually get things done when it's challenging to get started or make progress on something, like actually showing up.
Basically, yeah, why meetings make me do things, and why if I didn't have meetings with clients, my business would basically implode.
Well,
I'm
I mean,
terrible
your whole
at structuring
business is
my time.
having meetings with clients. So,
Well, that is the primary aspect of my business as a coach is if I didn't have meetings, I'd be like, oh, I don't feel like doing that right now. And so the external urgency is really helpful. I also don't think we'd have a podcast if we were like, oh, let's see when we want to record this week, because half the time we show up and go, oh, my brain. At least,
that's
well,
what
that's
we've
at least
spent the
today.
last, I don't know how many minutes. Uh,
30
oh, my brain, it's Monday.
and the holidays and all the things going
Yes.
different. Um, but yeah, so the upside being a lot of us, I show up for meetings with people. If I need to do something before a meeting with people, it will probably get done as long as I'm not overly swamped.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I actually had someone that I worked with that someone who I know very well that was like if we had to present something on Monday, they would be sending the deck to me Sunday night.
Hmm.
And it may need to have may need to have even been like printed so that it could be put in binders or whatever, but it was like last minute. So the kind of like the procrastination ties in with the I've committed to give this to someone else. In the past, we've talked about um, earlier this year, I was doing a presentation. And so I committed to getting the person the deck like 2 weeks ahead of time and actually sitting down, meeting with him to discuss the deck. And that was helpful for me because it wasn't just, oh, here's this deadline, try to get the deck to someone, but it was an actual, like, we're going to have a conversation about this. Um, and so that was helpful to my brain to say, okay, there's a reason and I have to take this thing over here. And by the way, we set it for 2 weeks before so that that way, even if I didn't quite have the deck done, I still had 2 weeks.
Right. And so much of this is, well, knowing yourself well enough, because too, so many of the neurodivergent things are like, why do we have to have a meeting? This could have been an email. And so often that is true, but I guess it's, the purpose. And so you and I meeting every week to record has a purpose. The purpose is to record a podcast. And so it's not superfluous because we can't do that by email.
Yeah, and there's other things. So we've talked about meetings as an external support for motivation. Um, there are other things that even just somebody else relying on you for something. So when we were talking before the call, I mentioned I don't have one now, but we're dog people, and I used to have a dog before my husband and I got married. Um, full disclosure, she passed away the year that we got married. I did not get rid of my dog, um,
Oh,
but we just didn't get another one yet. It's been a while. But my motivation to actually get out of the house and like function some days was
was tied
because
to that
I
dog.
had a dog and I had to take her out on a walker. I had to like she was relying on me. I had a dependent that needed me to help take care of her, and so that was an external motivation for me to keep my ish together even when I really couldn't function on days I couldn't function. So it it shows up in a lot of different ways, and that was long before I had the self-awareness to know like, oh, maybe I'm burnt out, maybe I'm in burnout, maybe I'm over or under whatever stimulated. Um Now in hindsight looking back, it's like, oh yeah, that was an external motivation.
Right.
But it's not just
Or
meetings.
yeah, not just meetings, but there was something impacting your executive function, like you said, whether it was being sick, whether it was being overwhelmed, whether it was just things in your life not fitting together in a way that worked for you.
Hmm.
But the dog created that external, point of reference. And in a certain degree, a lot of people, I think, take on something like a pet or an animal um, that they have to take care of, but inadvertently it helps them regulate themselves and do their
Hmm.
own things. Because often once we're up and running and initiating stuff, keeping that momentum going is easier. Maybe not
Yeah.
easy, but easier.
Yeah, it's something to get you outside of yourself. And I actually had a conversation earlier about giving yourself an external perspective to kind of anchor yourself for the day or for the moment or whatever, but something that takes you outside of your own brain. So for us, like meetings, having to take care of someone or something else, um, even externalizing things like, um, I could hold it up again, I did last time, the visual timer or other things, but how else do you uh, make yourself show up and motivate yourself even when it's really hard?
Um, Really it's meetings. I hate to say that, but that's I've done enough coaching calls that I can show up and do it even if I'm half dead. Um, I don't like to make a practice of that because working when I'm sick or overextended usually doesn't, it's a sign I need to take some downtime. But, sometimes you just don't sleep well. And for things that are routine or familiar, once I get started, I can usually do them after coaching for almost 15 years. While they're all different sessions, there is some pattern and some similar momentum to them. And usually people I've been working with for a long time. So I don't necessarily need to be in my full novel, able to process everything instantaneously mode for people to get some really good results.
Hmm.
And, I think because I live in a Western society that does value productivity, there are times that I still choose to, be in motion even if I'm not fully recharged or at 100%. And other ways that I've done that, usually include trying to find some external support. This morning I did a body doubling session with a virtual assistant. Um, this requires me to be articulate enough to be able to put an hour's worth of work into a list and have somebody help prioritize with me. I wasn't real, I was pretty cranky about this before I started. It was fine once I got going, but um, that external person again was useful. Also knowing that I'm working to offload some of the repetitive tasks so that I have more brain power available in the long run to do the things that need to be done.
Mm. I'm kind of hearing a pattern in our and if we start to go down a rabbit hole, we'll come back. But I'm hearing a pattern in our things that are external, so meetings, but it's meetings where you've already committed to show up, that you already know what the expectations are. It's very predictable, and it's work that you already know that you can do generally. Like for me, the taking care of a pet, it's like it's not complicated. um,
Right.
it's
You put
just
the food in the dish, you open the door with the
yeah,
lead, the dog,
it's
hopefully.
just enough to get going. So it's I'm hearing a pattern of our things that get us moving is that it is just that. It gets us started and gets us kind of out of a rut and back onto the road and going again. Um, and that they're also fairly low demand. And the reason that I say this, going back out of our rabbit hole, is before we started, you and I talked about I have used external activities as motivators, especially for things like getting out of the house and
Uh-huh.
getting social energy, kind of filling that sort of part of my life. So I've done things where I've joined, like a local club or volunteer work or whatever it is that fills the role of like I have a purpose, like I need to go meet with somebody or go do something with someone,
Mhm.
but it has to be kind of that enjoyable, low demand or something that my brain knows is like doable.
Right.
And when I start to dread it or not want, so if it's a recurring thing, okay, if I'm not feeling it one day, okay, fine. But if it starts to become a pattern, to me that's an indicator that this activity is no longer serving the like helping me with motivating. It's actually becoming a demotivator because I'm like, oh, I don't want to have to go do whatever it is. And then I have to do a little deeper soul searching as to like, well, what's really going on? Is it that activity or is it something else? Um, so it's just interesting to me how it's all the whole motivation piece is all kind of
Yeah.
interconnected, even when we
Well,
try to hack our brains.
one that's the thing. I think too the other benefit for me is the time blindness issue. Yeah, oh, I'll do it later. Well, my brain seems to operate in now or not now. Well, if I've got a meeting at 2 o'clock, oh, maybe I can get that thing done before the meeting at 2, or right after it wraps up at 2, I'm gonna, spend 30 minutes. So I need some anchors in my flow of time to kind of hook my other projects or activities onto. So even if maybe that isn't, oh, I need to finish this, project before my meeting at 2 because it influences the meeting that's happening at 2.
Mm.
It still gives me some form to, oh, I need to be done with this. I'd like to be done with this by here so that the time it takes doesn't keep expanding infinitely. It gives me
Yeah.
some some external structure.
Speaking of external structure, some people might say, well, Amy, what about a deadline? Isn't that an external motivator?
It can be, depends on how real it is, how overwhelming it is, and um deadlines are external motivators. It depends on, did you pick it? Did somebody else pick it? Or, is it a drop dead deadline, or is there some wiggle room in it? And for some people, deadlines don't work. It's like, they know they're fake deadlines. And so that strategy also isn't foolproof.
That's why I'm laughing because my brain's like, oh, you mean the fake deadlines that I set for myself? And then I go, but nothing's going to happen if I don't do that. So,
Right. Well, and for you knowing though that that deadline, has a knock-on effect for the rest of your week. Sometimes there can be, yeah, it's fake, but also then being able to see, well, yes, this then impacts my ability to do it. A thing that I want later can be a way to reframe those self-determined fake deadlines.
yeah, those internal ones. The the ones that work best for me is if they're collaboratively set or self-set, but they have an external component to it. So I need to, maybe I decided I'm doing whatever it is, like writing a blog post, but I have to share it with someone or get feedback from someone on a certain date, then that's a more effective deadline for me because it has that truly external component. Um, Logicking with myself, I'm just going to make up words, logicking with myself of like, hey, I've got to get this done now so that I can do whatever later. Sometimes will work, sometimes won't. At least for my brain and all of its funness.
Yeah. Well, again, I think we're going to maybe keep this one fairly concise because I think we hit on all the big points that we wanted. And it's another set of strategies to use a meeting, and depending on how you use the meeting and or other external structures can be another set of tools to help you get where you want.
Yeah. So I suppose with that, I don't know that we really have anything else other than I have an external deadline of my timer going. So with that, I am Megan with Focus Like a Mother and Change HP.
And this is Amy with Creative Catapult Coaching, and this is the Control Alt Think podcast.
And if you want to work with myself or with Amy, you can find us online. Just Google Focus Like a Mother or Change HP for me, Change HP Consulting, or Creative Catapult Coaching for Amy, and you will find our websites and our socials. And then anything else on that one, Amy?
That sounds good. Thanks for
All
calling it
right.
out, and I'll catch you later.
All right. Bye.
Bye.